it's an unavoidable necessary evil at certain points. Every wrestler I knew and grew up with overshot their potential. The one problem that I've found with women, and it's a physical problem, so that's a good thing, right? Thing is about Flow Sports, I got fired, and I'm proud of it, really proud of it.
What is up, wrestling fans? I am being joined by Coach Mike Mao, and he is killing it over there in San Diego. Poway High School is currently #2 in California, #13 in the country. Tell me a little bit about your background and how long you've been coaching at Poway High School.
Oh, Poway, not very long at all. I've actually moved from Texas to California in the last year. So I moved. Coach John Myers is the head coach at Poway, and I cannot say enough good things about him. But the only negative thing I will say about John Myers is that he has a tendency to throw everyone's plans into a people. Like, my wife and I were on vacation in Hilton Head Beach, and we were
Love it.
literally, oh, it was awesome. And like, things are going great. I'm working for Flow Sports. I'm covering the sport of wrestling full time, and I was loving life. And here comes John Myers. As I'm not exaggerating. I was literally laying on my stomach, just tooling around on Instagram. My wife is asleep in a chair next to me, and he's like, "I need you out here in San Diego, bud." I'm like, "Huh?" I mean, yeah, I'll come out and do a camp whenever you want. He's like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't think you understand. I need you out here in San Diego." And I'm like, "Oh shit! All right." So it's like that, huh? And so I pick my head up from my phone, and I look over at my darling wife, and I say, "What do you think about San Diego?" She's like, yeah, I like it there, sure." And I was like, "No, I don't think you get it. What do you think about San Diego?" She's like, "You son of a, you just moved me from Jersey to Texas, and now I got to go." Yeah. And so 6 weeks later, we moved to California, and I'm
Well,
coaching.
it sounds like it just kept getting better and better because I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Virginia. I don't really love the cold weather. So you went from New Jersey to Texas a little bit better, and now San Diego, you're living it up over there.
I am. I'm not. Oh, trust me. I'm not complaining at all. Like, it's wonderful. I love it. Yeah, there's something to be said for 65 and sunny every day. It's kind of it does make you soft, though. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's kind of unreal for sure. I mean, I definitely came across your profile when I was looking at all the content that you were doing with Flow Sports. Was that connection initially made when you were in Austin, Texas, or was that started when you were in New Jersey?
The connection between John and I and Poway.
Flow Sports.
Oh yeah, no. So when I worked with Flow, I started. Flow, it's a really kind of long backstory. Flow Sports started with two brothers. One was a wrestler, one was a track art runner or whatever. And so Flow Track and Flow Wrestling kind of emerged at the same time. And one of the things that Flow Sports did was it just pointed a camera at events and at athletes that up until that point, up until 2009, 10, 11, 12, there really was no coverage at all. And I, Joe, Joe Flo and Mark Bader went to Russian nationals, which is like, if you're into wrestling at all, you know that the Russians they're the best. Like, it's not even close. They put the best wrestlers on the mat every single year, and so they pointed a camera at Russian nationals when no one else was doing that, and like they came back with some of the most incredible footage I've ever seen. And so I started like breaking that stuff down for my athletes, right? Like, I was running a couple, wrestling schools in New Jersey, and one of the guys that I actually do a podcast with now, ironically, his name is Jim Airy. He was like, "Dude, you do such a good job of like breaking this stuff down for us. Why not put it on film?" Right? And so the first technique video I ever did was, I'm a little bit ashamed to say it, but it was shot on an iPhone 4. It was
What? There's no problem with that. Everything's shot on iPhones these days.
not on iPhone 4s. They're not.
Yeah.
Dude, but it was like, it was literally like propped up against a kettlebell. Like, and like, I didn't even have the good grace, like, and the good sense to like edit out the part where I'm like, boom. And like that's how I started making videos. And they did well. And I checked enough boxes in the content creation department to work full time for Flow for about 6 years, and I was really happy about my time there. And now I'm coaching again full time, which I didn't think was going to happen, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I saw some of the content on your YouTube page where you break down the top three countries, the top best countries in wrestling. You had Iran, Russia, and of course, US. So do
Oh,
you still kind of stand by that, that they're the top three and that some of the features that are best about them is Iran and their positions, Russia, and they're able to kind of incorporate their body in space and gymnastics? Or have you seen some changes over the past few years that make you think that there's actually a different country that is in the top three?
well, they're all kind of derivatives. I'm glad, man. That's you dug a little bit deeper than most people do. That's good. Yeah, they're derivatives. Cuba is a derivative of the Russian style. Um, Canada, let's say, is a derivative of the U.S. style. So they're all going to all roads are always going to kind of point back to those three. But yeah, I still stand by it. I think there are variations. I think the U.S. style, and of course, I might be a bit of a homer in this regard, but I think it does a good job of incorporating some of the best attributes of the other two, right? Like we have our guys that are can be position based, and then we have like super freak athletes as well. But I think that yeah, it's probably us, Iran, and Russia for the most part. And like that's not to say like it's getting more interesting too because with Russia not being able to compete at the World Championships over the last year or so, you're seeing a lot of their athletes go to different countries. It's pretty easy to transfer countries, right? So it's like some of these guys are wrestling for Serbia now, and some of them are wrestling for Slovenia, and some of so it's like we're starting to see this kind of amalgamation of different styles and different techniques take place, and it's awesome because back in the day, I don't know, it was like the USSR, and if they didn't wrestle for them, you didn't know. If they didn't wrestle for Russia, then you didn't know who they were. But now their third best guy is like, why the heck would I try and make this team where I can go to Slovenia or Serbia or Italy or wherever and start and make the world championships? So it's kind of it's thickened the pot, so to speak, across the world, and it's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of wrestling all over the world is exponential. When we look at your specific roots, I know there's catch wrestling, folk style, and then freestyle. What
Mhm.
was your base? And then what do you kind of consider to be your like lane of expertise, unless it's all three? Just kind of elaborate on what your
Uh-huh.
biggest style is.
Okay. So there's three styles that are contested at the international level. Okay, so the Olympics incorporates Greco-Roman wrestling, which is just the upper body, freestyle wrestling, which is you're allowed to attack the entire body, and then there's women's wrestling, okay, which is taken off in the last 10 years, especially. But it's been an Olympic sport since 2004. So that said, I would probably consider. So you said folk style. Folk style is just in the U.S. So we're the only country in the world that wrestles folk style. So what you see at the international level is always going to be either freestyle or Greco. That said, what is my lane of expertise? I don't know. Probably freestyle if I had to guess. Um, but I like to think that I try to think of those disciplines more as skill sets that can be incorporated into other disciplines, right? So, like, I think of Greco, and a lot of the technique that you use in Greco is very nuanced. That's why it doesn't have a lot of the same fan base, so to speak, because it's so nuanced that like trying to explain it to people that don't understand the sport is like, I mean, I might as well try to explain quantum theory to someone. I don't know. It's really, really difficult. But that said, I think it's probably invaluable when it comes to being a skill set that can be incorporated into other sports, right? That's why, especially in like the early years of mixed martial arts, you saw Greco guys have the most success. You know, um, Randy was a Greco guy. I mean, there's a bunch of them that were just upper body wrestlers that transitioned. You know, Chael Sonnen was a Greco guy. All these guys came from their Greco backgrounds, and they implemented that skill set into MMA. I look at it like, okay, I'm going to take some of the things that I do in folk style and help me to improve my freestyle, and I'm going to take some of the stuff that I do in Greco and incorporate it into freestyle. So I think when we start looking at these different sports as skill sets, it's like it's wide open, you know.
And you're able to apply them to different sports. And you just mentioned mixed martial arts. Are you a big MMA and jujitsu follower as well, or do you kind of stick with wrestling for the most part, and then you can catch some jujitsu and UFC fights when you can? Or are you hardcore everywhere, all combat sports?
I don't watch any of it.
Really
No,
interesting.
too many of my friends are getting hurt, man. I trained fighters for a while, and I'm just talking about MMA. Jiu-jitsu is fun. Like that's cool. Like I love jiu-jitsu. I think jiu-jitsu is great. But too many of my friends were getting beat up in MMA. I had a really hard time with it, man.
Who are
I
some of your friends?
Dan Askren, um, Daniel Cormier, like, like even guys that I was training, right? Like these are like those are the guys that you know that were friends of mine that went into an octagon and like, dude, I'll give you an example. My daughter's like the sweetest little girl. I love her to death. Apparently, that's a big, like it's like she destroys me. Like she absolutely destroys me. She's the only person in the world that can tell me no. They bust my chops about it all the time. But she's a night owl. She stays up all night and she'd rather sleep all day. And one time it was Saturday and Ben was fighting, and she knows Mr. Askren. She's been to events with Mr. Askren, and it was the Masvidal fight. Yeah, exactly. And so like it was very somber when it happened, of course. Like I was like,
Mhm.
oh my god, oh my god. But I didn't realize it, but it really kind of struck her, right? So much so that like 2 days later on Monday night, I'll never forget it. I was laying in bed. I was just about to sleep. And she just walks in completely unprovoked. And she goes, Daddy, is Mr. Askren okay? This is like 2 days later. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't call him. I didn't talk to him. So like there was like too many of those like instances where like, I don't know, man. I have a hard time with it. Just like I'll never forget the first time I wasn't even in the octagon. I was training this kid. His name was Chris Wing. He's just sweet, awesome kid. And his first fight, I cornered him in. They locked that cage door, and that was the most primal sound I've ever heard in my entire life. Just that bolt going down, clink, clink, and like I just like a guttural kind of feeling. So like I try to avoid it as much as I can. I do like I do get caught up in it, but like I was training this kid, and he's in the UFC, and I'm on vacation with my family, and like we gotta like I gotta watch him fight, right? I gotta watch him. So we're I forget where the hell we were, but we're at some beach town somewhere, and like I'm screaming at a television in the middle of some beach town in Orange Beach, Alabama, and I'm acting like a maniac. And my wife's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what are you doing?" So there were times where I've acted and done things that I probably are not super proud of because of MMA. So I'm pretty much done with it for now.
Yeah, I mean, when you get into the personal ties within the game, it makes it that much. I'm only starting to feel that a little bit because I've become friends with some of the people that I interview. So I'm
Sure.
only starting to now feel what it's like to like watch someone that you have a connection with go in the cage. And I completely agree with you that it gets too much anxiety and it can get a lot. But it honestly surprises me so much because when I look at your wrestling videos, you are that like typical hard ass coach. I'm sure you're very tough on your wrestlers, and wrestling, a lot of people would agree that it is the hardest sport and the most, I guess, tiring type of practices that you can do. So as a wrestling coach, these kids are going to high school, they're tired from school, they're going through the whole teenage life. How do you keep things fun for them when you're still doing these hard ass workouts all the time? How do you keep them motivated in the middle of the season when they're having hard weight cuts? What is it like from your perspective as a head coach?
Man, I love that. I'm probably not as much of a hard ass as you would think. If you ask them, I don't think I'm I don't think I'm as much of a hard ass as most. I don't know. I don't know. I like to think that I'm very empathetic. Um, excuse me. You know, okay, so the just to address the hard ass thing, I have for a long time, I was a little bit tougher on the athletes than I am now. And that's not to say that I've kind of gotten soft. I've just chosen to listen to my athletes more, number one. Number two, I've gotten a lot smarter about that kind of stuff, I think.
Mhm.
So that said, how do I keep it fun? You nailed it though. January and February suck. They just do. They do. So the idea has to be that if you're in my room, you love wrestling. You love wrestling. This is what we do for fun. This is not something that someone puts a gun to your head and you do. So if we're approaching it from that perspective, there are certain things about this sport that are not fun. The weight cuts we try to eliminate as much as we can. Like I don't see a reason for high school aged athletes to constantly be cutting weight. I think it's a poor practice. I think it's antiquated. We're having better results with guys cutting less weight. Now that said, it's an unavoidable necessary evil at certain points. So we'll take that and push it aside. So I can't do much about the weight cuts. That's going to suck no matter what, right? Number two, well, what sucks about it? The hard part. I have a girl in my room. This is so like I coach the RTC, but I also coach the little guys too, and I love coaching the little guys. I love it because a lot of them have zero filter. There's this little girl that just started coming to our club. Her name is Dakota, and she's wonderful. She's just this sweet, nice little girl that happens to enjoy grappling. But I can tell you this, she got her butt kicked a lot at first, and she would cry. And when all right, practice is over, start walking around a little bit, just kind of catch your breath. I would always walk up to her as she was crying, and she doesn't want to let me see that she's crying. She's wiping away her tears, and her her poor girl, her ponytail's like burnt like over here, and like her the strands of hair stuck to her face because she's crying. And I look at her and I just lean into her and like no one else can hear it. I just go, "We like the tough stuff, don't we?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "If you like the tough stuff, this is the fun part. It doesn't always feel fun all the time, but this is the fun part." And she eventually started she wouldn't even let me say it. She'd look at me and she'd go, "Okay, we like the tough stuff. We like the tough stuff. We like the tough stuff." And eventually she didn't have to say a thing. We just look at each other and be like, "You cool? We like the tough stuff." And so if we all come at it Like, that's why we're here. We're here to do the tough things. We're here to do the hard things. And can it be a drag in January? Yeah, it can. Can it be a drag with the weight? Yeah, it can. But if we're all coming to it from a place of joy, we love the tough stuff. Like, that's the fun. We don't do it because it's easy. I'd be playing, they'd be thumbing around TikTok if they wanted to do something that was easy, right? Or they'd be playing whatever video game it is that's popular with gens. I don't know. They'd be doing that because it's easy, but they don't, because they love the tough stuff. And if I just remind them that why we do it, well, that's why we do it. We do it because it's tough. It gets easier. And, I try to be empathetic when I can.
I love that story. And that's honestly awesome that you have a girl in the program, because I know that wrestling is starting to be on the rise for women as well. I'm going to tell my Frenchie really quick to shut it before she gets too loud. Hey, no. Shh. I think we'll get to her later. She's been kind of sick recently. But on the topic of women's wrestling and how it's on the rise, what have you seen in terms of the number of girls that apply or try out for wrestling? And do you think that it's going to continue growing at a rapid pace, or do you think it's just kind of, 1 out of 10, it'll be a girl that tries wrestling?
Nope. First of all, to answer your question simply, we're going to see a massive spike very, very soon, because it's hard to say this. How do I put it? Okay, so when club wrestling started, before 1984, there was no private wrestling clubs in the country. There just weren't. Right? They were either run in a school, for a school, by a school, or they were run in a township building by a township for a specific township. So that just sounds like we just basically did the Russian system. It's just state funded in a way. 1984 hits, and Ernie Monaco puts together the first private wrestling school in the country. Okay, does it for profit, which is like this novel thing. And so when he first started, he was met with a tremendous amount of resistance. But then he had a tremendous amount of success. And I'll get to women's wrestling. I promise this is a bit of a long way to go, but I promise.
I love the history. I love it.
Right. So it's like, but like, you got it. Like this, it's such a parallel. It's easy to draw the conclusion. So what happened was the high school coaches at the time were like, why do you need to go to him? You should only come to my practices and learn my system and blah, 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 blah. And it was just like this jealousy, weird thing, right? Well, Ernie had a tremendous amount of success with the Edge School of Wrestling very early on, but he met with, just about every high school coach in the area hated him. And it was more of like hating because like they weren't doing as well. Like their athletes weren't doing as well. They couldn't compete. Ernie, first of all, was open year round. That was a novel thing. That was not typical. He was studying tape of the absolute best wrestlers in the world, and most of these high school coaches, and I'm not trying to hate on them, but they were like part-timers, dude. They were like science teachers that needed a gig part-time, so it was like, why would they be able to compete with a guy that's doing this full-time? Nothing really changed in that department. They always butted heads until the first wave of Edge wrestlers became coaches. They went through college, they graduated college, they wanted to stay involved with the sport, and so they became high school coaches or club coaches. And they now, instead of like being like this, they were making their kids go to the club. And now there's a club, and I'm not exaggerating, like in New Jersey, you can't travel 10 miles, 15 miles without running into a wrestling club. There's one it's become as prevalent as pizza pizza places on the East Coast, right? Like there's a pizza place on every corner. Well, there's a wrestling club in New Jersey on every single corner. So how does that relate to women's wrestling? Well, at first, the women, especially the pioneers of the sport, were met with a tremendous amount of pushback. Trisha Saunders, a lot of people don't know, sued the AAU because they wouldn't allow her to compete. Okay, and she won. And
Oh
then
yeah.
yeah, and then Sarah McMahon, who was a silver medalist in the Olympics, goes on to MMA, and she like blows up. Like so, there's these little like pockets of like of spikes in women's wrestling. But now we're having the first generation of women's wrestling that grew up with it being a thing, and now their kids are getting into the sport. Okay, and it's awesome for me because I have this group of 4 girls that I train. They're mostly in high school. One's in high school, the rest from middle school. Their dad, East Coast guy, lives out here in San Diego, and he's having a hard time explaining to his wife. They have 4 girls, right? So he is like out friggin' numbered at the house. Like he is outnumbered. There is just a tremendous amount of estrogen floating around that house, and so and so he has to explain to his wife, like, why are you driving 45 minutes to take these girls to a serious practice? Why are you spending our days off? Why are we moving? We're moving? We're moving? Yeah, you're moving. Hopefully this podcast comes out somewhat after they move because that was still in the process. Anyway,
Yeah.
so he said, listen, I grew up not wrestling, but I watched all my buddies wrestle. And the ones that played basketball and the ones that played soccer and the ones that played baseball, give it a name. Those guys undershot whatever their potential was. They undershot their potential as human beings. Every wrestler I knew and grew up with overshot their potential. Every single one of them. And so that can't be just like there has to be a correlation there. There has to be. And so when you talk about high performance athletes in the sport of wrestling, you'll see there is a strong correlation between that and high performing adults in their chosen field. Why would we not want this for women? Why would we not want this for women? Every dad in the world wants their daughter to outperform their own, whether it be their own personal belief in their expectations or the society's expectations. Why would we not want that? And so you're seeing more dads getting really, really into going, no, my kid's going to wrestle. I don't care if it's a girl. What do I care? If she wants to do it, let her do it. And we're all reaping the rewards of it right now. So yeah, we're going to see a big spike real soon.
That's very exciting. I mean, I got a little bit of a taste of wrestling when watching ADCC, and the rule set is very
Wrestling centric.
Yeah, wrestling centric. So I love that. I'm also, just now getting into wrestling. I think I'm like a year into actually going to consistent classes 2 times a week. So what would you say as someone who's starting, later? I started when I was like 23. So I don't have that natural, I guess, like the muscle movement or the muscle memory. I don't really have that. So what would be your suggestion for anyone getting into wrestling later in life to be able to, make the most out of their learning?
Don't be here. So you said muscle memory. I think it's muscle in general, right? Like especially women for whatever reason. When I was in Texas, I did a lot of I taught at a lot of jujitsu. Like I taught at jujitsu classes quite a bit. And the one problem that I've found with women, and it's a physical problem, so that's a good thing, right? It's their neck, for whatever reason, just isn't used to being pulled on like that. And so they get injured quickly. So I would say to a young woman going to their wrestling classes, spend time spend time strengthening your like the small muscles. Like I take for granted the fact that like I have a really thick, stupid head and neck, right? Like, but like you have to kind of like this is 40 years of having people pull on me. It builds up. So there's that. But then the other thing is like, um, don't be afraid to go with someone that's bigger, stronger than you. Because I wrestling gets a bad rap for that. Like we have a tendency to be very Hulk smashy, right? Like, right? But if this is it's a conversation that you have to have. If there's a white belt that walks in to your gym and they just got off a college wrestling mat a month ago, you don't want to go with him without a conversation. Okay? Because that dude knows one speed. He knows college wrestling speed, and that's just not conducive for new athletes on to wrestling. It's not conducive at all. And it doesn't help, right? Like there are guys out there that probably could use to taper it in a little bit, you know.
I love that piece of advice. And I know we only have about 6 minutes left in this video chat before the Zoom ends it. So, two more quick questions. One of them is who would you suggest, a female athlete and a male athlete, that is best to watch, that you think is a good person to learn from?
Oh, okay. So give me 1 second because I have two girls in mind. The first girl that comes to mind is Amit Allure. She just won a world title. Mm, okay. Uh, if you're 130 pounds or heavier, you need to watch Amit Allure. If you're 129 pounds or lighter, you need to watch a girl named Susaki. She might be on a gender be damned. She might be the best wrestler in the world, period. Like, period, the end. Yeah, she's
Wow.
special. She is special, special, special. I don't think she's given up more than a point in the last 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, something like
That's
that.
amazing.
Yeah, she's unbelievable. So those are the two girls to watch right now. But as far as the guys go, Abdul Rashid Sadalayev is probably the most perfect wrestler in the last 20 years. Um, he, I think he has two losses in his entire senior level career. He's won world titles, 14, 15, 16 Olympics, 17 he lost in the finals to Kyle Snyder, 18 he won a world title, 19, and then he won the Olympics in 2020. And it's just like, oh, and 21 as well in Oslo. I was there for that one too. Um, yeah, he's perfect. Like it's like, oh, really? Like you're good at everything? Like you're just good at everything. Really? Yeah, he's like stupid good. But it depends on what you're into too, right? Like I go through like phases where like I just love watching the Japanese athletes. Like they're they're from space, they're really good. So it's like it's kind of what you're into, right? Like but Abdul Rashid Sadulayev is pretty special. And then there's like Jordan Burroughs, who like he's the greatest human, like just all around human being that we've ever had in this sport.
Oh,
He's like no, like he's the guy that every father should want their son to be like and their daughter to marry. Like he's the greatest human being.
I love that. I love those suggestions so much. I'm going to look into all of them. I respect so much of your opinion and all the work that you've done with the sport. And I'm so happy I found you through Flow Grappling. I'm a little bit, and Flow Wrestling, Flow Sports in general. I'm bummed that you don't make content with them as much. I don't know if you have time to even be doing that now that you're full time with Poway. But what was your time like working with them? And, are we ever going to see you again on like a guest feature or breaking down some type of wrestling move?
No, probably not. The thing is about Flow Sports, I got fired, and I'm proud of it, really proud of it. Um, they fired me for letting everyone that would listen know that they take advantage of our love for the sport. And whether that be grappling or wrestling or whatever, they I was on the road and away from my family for 35 weeks a year, and they didn't want to pay me what I asked to be paid. So that's fine. So
Mhm.
they found a way to silence me. And I'm not bitter about it at all. It's something that I'm really, really proud of. And it just so happened that I moved to California and started another full-time job. Anyway,
Wow.
so it's like,
Divine timing.
yeah, no, it was the writing was on the wall for years. I was
Yeah.
not happy with the corporate structure over there at all. Does that mean that I'm never going to create content again? No, I do enjoy creating content. I love podcasting. I love doing videos. But truth be told, like like the technique videos that I did for so many years, the behind the dirts and the breakdowns, I don't know. I just kind of moved past it. I don't hate it. It doesn't like revolt me. I'm just kind of past it. I don't know.
Very interesting. Well, the comments that you kind of made about Flow Sports do not shock me. I know they're kind of going through a lawsuit right now with some alleged fraudulent and kind of sneaky billing practices. I don't know if you heard about that.
Oh,
So
sure did.
yeah, they're kind of yeah, they're going through a lot right now. I'm glad you found better things, and I'm sure you're making a household name over there in San Diego. I really want to do a longer form podcast with you at some point when I upgrade my whole system. But this was awesome. Thank you so much. And leave the last minute to you to let us know about anything coming up in the future with Poway or anything you're doing on your own YouTube channel. The floor is yours.
Okay. If you are anywhere within a 250-mile radius of Poway, California, please come to our RTC practices. They are Monday through Thursday at 4:30 p.m. starting March 1st. So you're more than welcome to come through whenever you want. I have podcasts that I do with Athleter, and I also do a live podcast every Tuesday night at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. So you can find all that stuff on my Instagram bio, and that's where you can find it. So thank you.